I'm still Josh. This is still Danny. And we're going to talk about rest.
Rest, not the
rest. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about who we are.
We could, though.
Yeah.
Some other time.
Some other time. We'll save that for another episode.
Yeah.
Matthew 11:28 says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." 29 says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Psalms 91:1 says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." Proverbs 19:23, "The fear of the Lord leads to life. The one rests content, untouched by trouble." That one really stuck out to me. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Acts 2:26, "Therefore my heart is glad and my tongue rejoices. My body will also rest in hope." So kind of navigating through those, where would you say rest is found in the biblical context? Like,
well, clearly,
is there a place?
I feel like it's in abiding in a sense. So kind of a common theme you see is that we're looking for something where we're finding rest in the hope for.
Okay.
And what I find kind of funny with that is, the popular saying, or I'm sure you've heard it, "No rest for the weary," right? Which in worldly context is kind of like, you work your whole life, you die. There's no rest for the weary.
You're having a bad day and then it gets worse.
Yeah. And so I think what's kind of ultimately encouraging about all the scripture, and I didn't even realize how many verses there are about like rest, and I'm sure that's not even all of them.
Oh yeah, there's tons.
But with that said, it gives us like an ultimate goal in a sense, and I find that as a common theme throughout scripture is, again, that simple idea of, or I guess it's not that simple, but at its core, we're in the world, we're not of the world. Ultimately, we're running our course for something far, far greater. And that's kind of what I pick up through these verses about the rest, is that the only way we can find it here in what is not our home is through him.
Yeah. I think that biblically lines up with, we find rest in our hope in God. We find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. We find rest in the fear of the Lord. I mean, that's the other thing where that one can get
Which
little.
is funny.
Yeah, you're like, wait, you rest in the fear of the Lord?
Yeah.
But that's the beginning of all wisdom, right there. Is if you don't have a healthy fear of the Lord, you can be kind of restless and maybe bratty in your faith of like, well, I did it. And it's like, ooh. I find it interesting to. And I've talked about this at youth before too, but where, we're even kind of walking this out right now on set, right? But rest is found when you feel safe, or when there's calm, or when there's stillness.
Yeah.
But what rest does to you also is you stay. Like, I mean, my kids are very active sleepers, so they'll move around and roll around, that kind of thing. But typically, you're not going to find somebody resting in the middle of the freeway, right? Unless there's like an emergency going on or something like that. Typically, you're going to find somebody, they find rest in a safe place. If somebody's injured, if an animal's injured, if whatever, they'll go away, they'll tuck away, they'll find a quiet, calm, still place to stay and rest.
Yeah.
If you're really exhausted or you're having a crazy day, you go home and you rest. Typically, I think rest is associated with sleep, which, I mean, you can find that for sure. But socially and with my calendar and everything like that, like
rest encompasses a lot, like a mental state, obviously physical, but and even
it's
within
not
physical,
limited to
there's a lot.
sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
I can be resting and be present.
Yeah.
And kind of like what we talked about last week, I think you have to have peace in order to really have true rest. If you don't have peace, rest is going to elude you.
Yeah.
And it's going to be something where you're always needing it. You realize like, oh, I really need to rest. Oh, I just really need to stop. I really just need to stay put for a while. I just need to calm myself down, but I can't because I got this. And you don't have the peace of God. So you're not going to find rest. You're not going to find his rest. Because your burden is too heavy, or your weariness is too pressing and right in your
It
face.
reminds me, like, visualizing that in a sense. You were talking about, I think it was you, reading the Lord of the Rings series, right? And in that, if you've seen the movies, there's a very good visual depiction of that, in that as Frodo is carrying the ring towards, the ultimate goal, which is to destroy it, he's never able to really rest. Like, it's fitful nights of sleep being, ambushed by this or that, and he
Everything
never
that wants it.
Yeah, he never truly, like, can be like until the very, very end. Even on the way back, like, he's still having to go through trial after trial after trial, and he's not finding that true. I mean, there's definitely no peace. Definitely, like, so always someone trying to kill him, always. And so I think when you said that, that's just what came to mind. And I think on our own level, especially as I've kind of gone into this age where you get a job, obviously there's school, there's a lot of stuff going on that's you just fill your calendar up more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
And the difference though with that is that if you can have peace in that, if you're not like, what am I going to do for school? Is this what's right? Is this God's plan for me? Is this, I hate my job. I need to leave. Everyone sucks. Basically, you're not really at peace with anything. And that's what drains you. And I found that personally is, as I was going through trying to decide, like, even just what school I should transition into, I was like, oh, what's God's plan for me? That common thing of, and then, it really finally clicked. It's like, well, God's going to use you wherever. And so in that little part of my life, I found peace. And ultimately now I'm not stressed about it. And, even though I know I'll have a busy year, this school year, I'm okay with that. Like,
but there's a place of rest that know, like, okay, I can bring this to God and I can talk to Him about it. I can lean into Him, and He's going to give me that rest. He's going to give me that calm, because He's like, okay, this is where you're going. This is the momentum that I'm going to give you to get to this spot. But part of that is you got to rest. Yeah, you can't be striving. You can't be anxious. You can't be worried and doubting and fearful and all this stuff. Like, you got to be able to stop and prioritize what's most important. Yeah, because otherwise,
what matters most.
Yeah, what matters most. Really. I mean, at the truest place of that is, it's like, okay, that's where when you boil it all down, when you lay it out on the table and start, getting things off the table and realizing what is taking up the most time in your life, you got to really filter it through. Like, is this robbing me of rest? Is this relationship robbing me of rest? Is this anger robbing me of rest? Is this job robbing me of rest? Is it taking my attention and my affections away from Jesus? And I think there's a reason why He's saying, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Like, that's some pretty deep rest. That's not just a spot where you're like, oh, so my body can rest, or so I can just cool down a little bit because I've been running a long time and I'm just really sweaty and
like
stinky.
Snoozing on the couch watching people film a podcast. It's completely different.
Exactly, totally different than that. Yeah, but I do think it's critical for really everybody watching this. Like, this is something that everybody needs more of, is rest. And we're not talking about just sleep. I'm not saying, oh, so everybody go to bed. If you're watching
8
this,
hours a night, make sure go to bed at 10.
If you're watching this
at
1 in the morning, go to sleep.
Yeah,
go get your rest. No, I'm talking about, like, even more than that. Like, you shouldn't be. It's not going to be healthy for you to be living off of 2, 3, 4 hours of sleep regularly. But I'm talking like a lifestyle of rest. I'm talking about a vision, a focus, a value system that promotes rest. And because there's seasons of action, there's seasons of, okay, you need to rise up, you need to go for it, you need to go after it. But then there's also going to be a season where you need to sit down, rest in His presence, rest in His peace, and let that wash over you. Because, man, running on a dirt road, you're going to get stuff thrown at you. You're going to get attacked. You're going to get all these kinds of things. And we can't just keep going and going and going and going and going. Like, at some point we need to take a breath and look around, get perspective, gain wisdom and understanding of how to continue to move forward. And if we're constantly in this cycle of no rest, there's that can produce some really bad fruit.
Yeah, and I think especially in a world where there's a common theme of, just keep grinding, all day, all night, just don't stop. Like
hustle hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Literally, like they're like, if you stop, then you failed, right? Like if you fall down, you have to get back up. Which, like, obviously, on a certain level, yes, that's true. But there's also what they don't tell you is that you will be extremely unhappy. You will be extremely unfulfilled if that's not leading you anywhere. Like what you do with your time, and you were talking about like prioritizing kind of in a way, like you do have to prioritize in a sense rest. And when we say rest, again, you should at least be sleeping somewhat.
That is part of it.
Yeah, you'll go through seasons of your life where you sleep more, sleep less. That's normal. But then also on that deeper level of kind of like spiritual rest, I guess, if you're not seeking that, which is very easy to miss, it's very easy. And I struggle with this constantly. Again, because you don't prioritize it. And I think in a way it might look different for different people in their own lives, obviously. Yeah. But finding that and then finding how that looks for you and how you do that in your own life. And that was something I wanted to ask you is like, what does that in a sense, like for Josh?
Yeah. So
what does that look like?
For me, where I typically find rest, obviously is, when my head hits the pillow and I got the AC on and I'm not too warm, right? I can find good quality sleep. But where I've been finding rest recently is outside. And sometimes I'm invited into rest. Like I'll get back from work and it'll be difficult sometimes because I'm like, I don't feel like going on a walk. But I'll find rest when I go for a walk. It's just a short walk with my family. So I'm not alone, but I'm going and doing something that I'm not striving, I'm not working, I'm not going to do something else. There's not anything else on the schedule. And sometimes it's 10 to 20 minutes of just walking around the block. And that helps settle things. That helps bring me into a spot of even more rest to where I'm not just rushing off to go do the next thing.
Gotcha,
And then even with nights like tonight, when we film these, I prioritize, and I'm not like, okay, I have to be back. The moment we're done, I gotta hustle home and get to bed, and then all this kind of stuff. When I create space and create margins for not having one thing on top of the other, I can have rest periods in between there, and that also helps. And then also helps me be present when I'm there, so that when we're filming this, when we're doing this, when we're talking about it afterwards, all that kind of stuff, I'm not like looking at my, I don't have a watch, but looking at the clock or checking the time or being like, oh man, we gotta okay.
We have been rolling for 15 minutes, okay, Josh?
Yeah, okay.
For real, we have.
But being restful, that's the other part too, where I've found that my rest is contagious in a really, really good way. When I'm rested up, when I'm calm, that influences my kids, that influences my wife, that influences people around me. You might also call it peace.
Yeah, okay.
But I think being at rest is a mindset that you just have, and it rests on you. So when the peace of God is on you, it's something that is with you. It's evident, but it's also very easily shared because when you're in that spot.
Yeah, and what struck me there was how you were, two things really, but one was, and the first one was how you mentioned that it was with your family. Now, something that, as I kind of mentioned, it being personal to you and whatever that may be. So you're a people person. You've mentioned that time and time again. Everyone knows that. If you know Josh, he loves being around people. Yes. Me, on the other hand, I'm not so much. Like I do not recharge with people. I recharge on my own. So I don't necessarily like. I love my family, obviously, and in certain ways, sure, maybe I do find some rest doing stuff with them. But generally, I would have to say mine is alone because that's where I find that. So that was one thing, and then the other thing was you were talking about how it's like contagious, which is so true. I mean, think about it like this. If you've ever been in a room with a very charismatic person who's just like genuinely happy, and we've talked about like joy, how having a true sense of joy, not just like happiness, but actual joy, that lightens up the room. Like when someone comes into that, they feel that. And I'm sure, or I hope everybody has sensed that or been around someone like that or has experienced that in their own life in whatever form it may be. But I found that, I don't know, it struck me in that, that will absolutely benefit your family, the friends around you, just people that come in contact with you at work. Like it's it's a mindset that I feel like goes with that sense of joy and peace.
Well, and we make jokes about it too, where, yeah, man, you look like you could use some rest. Man, you look like, and right, we're always referring to that as sleep. Yeah. But here's the kicker. When we say, wow, you look well rested, that's a compliment. That's something that we're like, yeah, this is really good. You know, and when you wake up and you have that energy and you're like, yeah, okay, I can go conquer the world, right? You're well rested.
Yeah.
Okay. You have what you need to then go out and take action. You have what you need to go out and make a change. You have what you need to go out and positively influence people in a way where you're not grumpy. You're not, coming at it from a position of like, well, I have lack, so I'm going to make everybody else pay and suffer because I didn't make good decisions last night and I was up all night, or I was, whatever. And so I think it's interesting how often we tie rest to sleep, but I do think it's important that we untie that because it's something that it's a cousin, but it's not the same thing. So rest and sleep, those are two things that are related. And one definitely affects the other. If you're not sleeping, you're probably not going to have true rest. But just because you're sleeping all the time doesn't mean you're going to be rested either, because sometimes rest can slip into laziness if we're not careful.
Yeah, definitely.
To where all of a sudden it's like, well, you're sleeping too much, or you're always in this spot of, I just want to rest, man. I just need to just not do anything, right? Like, whoa, okay, get a job, do something, definitely. Like, call somebody, go for a hike, do something where you're being proactive, you're getting, your blood flowing.
And you mentioned kind of, I felt like you were alluding a little bit to a sense of like time management as well, which is super important. Yeah. And obviously it ties in, or it will affect you spiritually, but also just like on a general level. Yeah. Like you're saying, if you're not well rested, like actually sleeping, that's going to affect you. That's going to affect your, everything. And so
your face, your mind, your heart.
Yeah. Just
literally
everything.
Your heart.
Wait, sleep affects your heart?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Crazy study. I don't have the
science with Josh.
The science. Yeah. But, the people that have been married for long periods of time, their hearts will even sync up, like as they're sleeping, like their heartbeat will beat in the same rhythm for people that have been married for a long time. So, when you find rest and you find rest with, your spouse, even at that spot where you're both unconscious, like your bodies will sync up like that. Then studies have shown that.
Can we get a fact check on that?
Yeah, fact check. Yeah. Facebook, no, just don't do it. If they're this far into the message, I'm proud of you. I am proud of you for watching.
So at this point, we can say whatever we want.
We can say, just throw out outlandish things towards the end
and see who notices it.
Yeah, like kale is a good idea.
Okay, listen, we've talked about this time and time again.
What kale recipe do you have for us this week as we wrap up?
Well, okay,
the topic of rest.
This is a new one.
Or wait, actually, sorry. Before you say that, where do you find rest?
I kind of mentioned it, but I do.
Quick recap.
I do find rest by myself, and kind of, but more importantly, when I'm by myself, I do. There's a lot I can do, right? Which is not so much where I find that, but it's also, and especially in the summer right now, I've noticed that. It can be something as simple as going for a drive, but also specifically, I don't know why, but just in the evening when everything's cooling down, I love to just go for a drive with no particular destination in mind. And
do you listen to music when you're driving?
No.
Nice.
No, I just roll down the windows and I'll just drive. And I love it because your mind isn't really on anything except where you're going. And in this case, I'm not even going anywhere specific. Yeah. And so I always find it, if I can do this, right? If I can make the time to do this, even if it's just 15 minutes, my entire, I come home, it's now, getting dark, I'll take a shower, I'll go to bed. And the next day, I fall asleep better because you've kind of mellowed yourself out.
That is interesting.
For me, if I don't, my mind is like this all night. It will not shut off.
But so you find rest.
Before rest.
Before you sleep.
And then I rest. And then it's like, and then I get up.
Quality sleep right there. There you go. Sleeping tips with Danny.
Also,
don't count sheep.
No, don't do that.
Don't count sheep. Go for a drive.
But another good one
windows down.
So here's what you do. So I did this when I was sick. I think we can put this
Is this your kale recipe?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is, so you take NyQuil, right? and then you take
Uh-oh.
a melatonin.
He's not a doctor.
No, I'm not a doctor. No medical
not a
advice here,
doctor.
but it works.
Okay.
So NyQuil with a melatonin, right? Okay. Now you warm up. It's like a little glass of red wine, and you just
Oh, brother,
neck it.
no, we got to cut that out.
No. You sleep like a baby. I didn't wake up for.
How old are you? No, don't say that
Wait,
either.
wait.
Don't say that either. Okay, let's get back to your kale recipe.
Yeah, so my kale recipe, it's not really a recipe. So we planted a bunch of tomato plants this year. And they say that you obviously nourishing the plant with like plant food and blah, blah, blah.
Positive words.
Yeah, and then, you just talk
affirmation.
to it. And,
You're a beautiful
really
plant.
And they're not. Tomato plants are hideous. Now, anyways.
Wow.
So
We don't have any tomato plants that are listening right now.
Hopefully not. But so you take the kale, right? And so if you're going to cook it in a blender, basically, you just blend it up. And this is after it's sat in the sun for a while, so it's kind of dry. And then you just pour it into the dirt by the tomatoes and just pat it in.
Oh, okay.
And I tried that. The problem was, it sounded like a great idea because supposedly kale is nutritious. It's not because it killed the tomato plants. See,
Wow.
Even the plants don't like
So
it.
kale is
It's
jealous.
just garbage. So just get rid of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in and hopefully laughing with us, or at least giving us a significant eye roll with
Yeah.
the
that
last
would
little
be
bit
good.
there. But main point is rest is super important. It's not the same as sleep. If you find rest and you're engaged in rest, you will sleep better. I would definitely say that. We're
100%,
definitely saying
100%.
that. But I think rest is an important piece of what matters most, and in our walk with God, how we engage with God, how we engage with other people, and that if we're too busy, if we're too one thing after one thing after one thing after one thing, rest will elude us. And also, you can't have rest without the peace of God. That's what we talked about last week. That is a side effect of having the peace of God, is you will find rest. You'll be drawn to that spot where you'll just, this is it. And that's it.
Deuces.
Yeah.
Ciao. See you next week.
For another episode of What Matters Most. Just end it with the two.
Yeah, we'll just cut the audio slowly. Yeah,
You do good fades too.
I know, right?
It's good. Fade to black.
My fades. I need to get a haircut too. I need to get a fade on my haircut.
Don't do it.
I'm gonna.
No.
Did
You with
see
a
this?
fade?
No, that's what I always get.
Your picture on the wall with
Okay, that was really long. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't normally have my hair that long.